This is a good day for our country, and I'm sure a very proud day for all of you. I'm pleased that we can meet together today as the Equal Pay Act of 1963 goes into effect all across this great land of ours.
The Equal Pay Act of 1963 was a monumental piece of legislation that helped create equal rights for women in the workforce. The act established the right for all workers, regardless of gender, to receive equal pay for equal work. Women especially felt they deserved the right to receive the same pay and same opportunities as men. The act helped reinforce the responsibility of employers to ensure fair and equal practices, while also giving employees, especially women and other minorities, the power to demand their rights and hold employers accountable. Although women were finally treated fairly and respected under the legislation, women still face challenges getting equality in the workforce today. Women consistently continue to be discriminated against, and it is the responsibility of employers as well as American society to uphold the rights that women deserve. The Equal Pay Act made a difference in the lives of women and other minorities in the workforce.
Unequal rights. In the early 1900s, women began to ditch the apron and go out into the workforce. The workforce was not kind. It didn't take long for them to realize what rights and equality they deserved. From early on, many tried to address the problem of women's equality in the workforce. They even created a program within the Department of Labor to address these issues. In 1918, the U.S. Department of Labor created the Women's Industry Service to address women's labor issues and to bring governmental attention to the rights of female workers. Women early on also became major advocates for equality in the workforce. Women such as Winifred C. Stanley was a major advocate for equal pay while serving in Congress. From Inner Sight, it says that Stanley served 2 years in Congress from 1943 to 1945. And in 1944, she introduced an equal pay amendment to the National Labor Relations Act that would have made it unlawful to discriminate against any employee on account of gender. It's women like her that helps women get fair labor rights. She stated that it has often been remarked that this is a man's world. The 1938 Fair Labor Standards Act introduced new laws that help strive for equal pay. From the U.S. Department of Labor, it says the bill provided for a 40-cent an hour minimum wage, a 40-hour maximum work week, and a minimum working age of 16. Sadly, because of its radical intentions at the time, the bill was not passed. Fight for equal pay. Women were tired of the unequal practices at work. Many women decided that they would join together in protest. Protests broke out all over the United States in unification to press the government to get equal pay. From Time.com, it says, in 1983, communications across the country ground to a halt when the majority of workers for Western Union Telegraph Company went on strike, partly to ensure equal pay for equal work for its male and female employees. The strike wasn't ultimately successful, but it was a very early public demand for fair pay for women. This strike was made to make an effect to have equal pay. More efforts have been made to help women with the pay they deserve, but they needed a leader to help them become successful. From the article Esther Egerson Peterson, it says, in 1944, Peterson became the union's first lobbyist in Washington, D.C. At her first union lobbyist meeting, all the men stood up when she walked in. Peterson didn't want to be treated differently and announced, "Please don't stand up for me. I don't intend to stand up for you." Esther did this to show that she believes in equality. Esther showing her belief in equality helps others see that she's a great leader. Also from the text of Esther Egerson Peterson, it states, one of Peterson's main projects involved raising the minimum wage from 40 cents to 75 cents an hour. Even though she didn't succeed with this fight, she eventually got to the point where she succeeded in helping with equal pay. Women have been going through struggles for years and finally saw some changes. Securing the rights. In 1963, the 88th Congress of the United States passed the Equal Pay Act. It was signed into law by President John F. Kennedy.
I must say I am a strong believer in equal pay for equal work, and I think that we ought to do better than we're doing.
This law states no employer having employees subject to any provisions of this section shall discriminate within any establishment in which such employees are employed. This means that there should be absolutely no unfairness between the pay of men and women in the same profession. The day the Equal Pay Act was enacted was a great day for all women in the United States to create a greater world overall. From the authors Rose Catter and Sarah Estep, they state, further legislation built on this core principle to not only make it easier for women to participate and stay in paid work, but also be paid equitably. This law gave people the right for employees to be free from the discrimination in their workplace and allow women to be paid as equal to men. Even though after the act women were happy, a lot of people had their own opinions. From Carrie Ann Renzoli, she says, instead, 46% of men and 30% of women believe the problem of equal pay and gender parity has been made up to serve a political purpose and is not a legitimate issue, according to a survey of 8,566 American adults conducted in March by SurveyMonkey. After the act, men and even women thought that it was unnecessary to have this act and that it's not a real issue. This would be expected from men, but even a percentage of women agreed with this statement.
Advancement of women. The rights for women were still affected even after this law was signed. From the article, The Fight for Equal Pay 40 Years On, it says, 40 years ago, a group of women sewing machinists at the Ford Motor Company plant in Dagenham saw red. They discovered that men who were doing the same work as them were paid 15 cents more. The women walked out of the plant on June 7, 1968, in support of a claim that would not only pay them the difference, but that would recognize their skills and put them on a higher grade. These women saw the differential in pay and immediately left to show their frustration. Issues were occurring even after the act, and more laws were enacted to ensure equal pay for men and women. When new laws added, new improvements came too. The Paycheck Fairness Act would help strengthen the Equal Pay Act to ensure protection against pay discrimination. From the article, The Paycheck Fairness Act, it says, specifically, it limits an employer's defense that a pay differential is based on a factor other than gender. This makes it unlawful for any employer to pay their employee any less than a man without a valid reasoning. This new law improved working conditions for women, but the fight continues.
Signing this bill today is to send a clear message that making our economy work means making sure it works for everybody, that there are no second-class citizens in our workplaces, and that it's not just unfair and illegal, it's bad for business to pay somebody less because of their gender or their age or their race or their ethnicity, religion, or disability.
A responsibility to keep fighting. The Equal Pay Act is not done yet. In the course of about 50 years, women still are treated unequally. According to the article examining the Equal Pay Act of 1963, the fight for equal pay continues. Although women represent nearly half of the labor force, according to 2018 data reported by the National Women's Law Center, they were paid 82% of the income for men. The issue of pay has been an issue for decades and will continue on if it's not stopped.
When President John F. Kennedy signed the Equal Pay Act of 1963, he declared to make pay equal for women. But here we are in 2013, and women are still making around 20 cents less per dollar than men.
The Presidential Committee has noticed this issue and has worked on fixing the gap. From Joe Biden, from the article statement on the 60th anniversary of the Equal Pay Act of 1963, it says, Vice President Harris and I are committed to building on the legacy of the Equal Pay Act and ensuring every worker is paid fairly and has the opportunity to participate in our economy to their fullest potential. This shows as the 46th President of the United States was working to stop the growing inequality. The struggle for women has been a long occurrence going on for many years. As the issue continues, the gap will resist closing, which will leave women affected for many more years to come.
The passage of the Equal Pay Act of 1963 was a critical step in the fight for equality, giving the right of women to receive the same pay as men for equal work. This helped give women better job opportunities, which has helped their families to have a more substantial income to benefit their needs. This legislation recognized that fair wages were not just a privilege but a right, ensuring that discrimination based on gender had no place in the workforce. However, with rights come responsibilities. It is the responsibilities of employers as well as the U.S. government to uphold the law. Though progress has been made, the fight for true pay equity continues even today.